All right, we are live.
Good morning. My name is Maggie Ullman, and I'm the chair of our Environment and Safety Committee for the City of Asheville. Today is our September 24th remote committee meeting. Welcome. All of our council members and our staff are participating virtually. And to help y'all follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda as we proceed. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. The number for that is 855-925-2801, and the meeting code is 9477. For those of you that are with us today, welcome. For today's meeting, we also have the option for folks to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call and comment live, that same phone number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 947. When you get in there, your phone will be muted and you'll hear the meeting live, and then you'll need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. So before we jump into the agenda, I'll do a roll call and give folks a chance to come off mute and say hello. First, we have our Vice Mayor, Sandra Kilgore.
Good morning, everyone.
We also have our Councilwoman, Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
City Manager Deborah Campbell is having some audio. Not sure if she can say hey or not.
I'm good. Good morning.
Great. Welcome. Also, our City Attorney, John Maddox.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, John. We have our Sustainability Director, Bridget Herring.
Good morning.
We also have our Fire Department Business Manager, Beth Bechtel.
Good morning.
Hey, Beth. Also, our Fire Department Financial Business Manager, Elise Lewis, is with us.
Good morning.
And then I also see our Fire Chief, Chief Case. Welcome.
Good morning.
Our Parks and Rec Director, D. Tyrell McGirt. Welcome.
Good morning.
I see our Deputy Chief in the Police Department, Jackie Stepp.
Good morning.
And I also see Kelly Hines from the Fire Department. She might just be listening.
Good morning.
Oh, great. Hey, Kelly. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody else, but welcome everybody. Big meeting today, exciting meeting today. So we'll go ahead and jump into our agenda where we start with a public comment opportunity before we get rolling. Talia, do we have anyone in the queue to get us going?
One moment, let me recheck.
Thanks.
Yes, we do.
Oh, fantastic. All right, caller.
Caller
Welcome.
ending in 0852. You will have 3 minutes to speak. I am going to unmute you now.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. My name is Jensen Gelfond. I live in West Asheville, and I'm calling to speak about the solicitation ordinance. I see that your plan is to bring that back up again next month, and that your plan is to speak specifically about the solicitation ordinance on Tunnel Road and Patton Avenue. And based on prior meetings, it sounds like you might be discussing the idea of making that ordinance more restrictive. I know that the police department had discussed the idea of expanding the high traffic
sorry,
zones.
we're waiting for Talia to bring up the presentation.
Sorry,
Deborah,
there's some noise on the line there.
sorry, keep going, Jensen.
Okay, and so, yeah, there were discussions about increasing the restrictions and not allowing people to speak when they were asking for resources in high traffic zones of Asheville that already exist in some parts like downtown and Biltmore Village. And I'm just, really concerned about the ordinance and what this is saying about our town and where we're putting resources here. I have seen the presentation that the Asheville Police put forth. I think that was around June, talking about the correlation with panhandling and traffic accidents, but I didn't see any evidence of causation. The places where people panhandle are places where there is high traffic, because panhandlers will go to high traffic areas to engage with more people, but I don't see the evidence in their presentation of panhandlers causing those accidents. And I think the idea that somebody who is asking for resources to their fellow community members might be slapped with a $500 misdemeanor to be just not the right way that we should be approaching these community members. And, thinking about what someone who doesn't have resources, what will happen to someone who does not have resources, who gets that kind of misdemeanor, and where that will put them in the criminal justice system, how that will silence people who really need to actually be more visible in our community and provided more resources in our community. And I'm just thinking about the inhumanity of arresting people or citing people for simply verbally stating their need and finding a way to work with other community members. So my suggestion is to consider completely removing that aspect of the panhandling ordinance and removing the penalty for people speaking their needs anywhere in Asheville. I think to transform public safety, we need to actually rethink our policies and not make them more restrictive. So thank you so much for your time today. You do well.
Thanks, Jensen. Talia, do we have anyone else?
Let me recheck. No, we do not.
All right. Thank you very much. We will, we're going to reorder the agenda a slight bit so that we can jump into currently numbered. Oh, no, sorry. We're going to approve the minutes first. Item number 2. Does anyone have a motion to approve the August 27th meeting minutes?
Sandra, so moved.
Second.
Fantastic. I'll do roll call vote. Vice Mayor Kilgore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Myself, aye. The minutes are approved. Thank you. And so we are going to reorder item number 4 and 3. So first, we're going to jump in with our Sustainability Director, Bridget Herring, to hear a quarterly update on the wide range of awesome work we're doing for environmental sustainability. Bridget, take it away.
Good morning. And again, my name is Bridget Herring, and I have the privilege to serve as the Sustainability Director with the city. This is the first quarterly update that the Sustainability Department has provided to this committee. And so as it is the first update, I thought it would be good to set the stage to talk about the scope of the work of the department and the policies and plans that we're actively working on in our current work plan. And then also hopefully we'll address some of the questions that came up during the August work session, and you'll get to see some alignment with the work plan that City Manager Campbell is going to be presenting again to you on this agenda. So if we move to the next slide, the key takeaways that I want to leave you with today are that there's been a number of goals that Council has adopted since the inception of the sustainability program back in the early 2000s. And hopefully you'll be able to see which of those policies we're actively working on in our work plan. We've also utilized the Municipal Climate Action Plan that you all adopted in 2023 to help prioritize our work and be a little bit more strategic about how we're deploying the resources that we have currently available. But this work really focuses also a lot on internally working like through the organization as how we become more sustainable and how that has positive impact on our community, as we're one of the main providers of infrastructures and services to our community. But also there's direct programming that's provided to our residents to help them have access to information and resources to incorporate sustainability into their work and personal lives. But this requires like heavy collaboration, both in terms of how we work with other departments within the city and how we work with community partners, recognizing that different community partners have different access to community members that maybe the city might not have. So moving on to the next slide. So I like to think of our work. We have, as I said, we have a number of different resolutions, and I kind of put them into these 4 buckets. So thinking about energy related policies and programs, which has to do with like carbon emissions and renewable energy. Moving on to climate, which is more about adaptation and resilience, and like how are we able to thrive even though our changing might be unstable or changing. And then thinking about food, and that's really about access to being able to grow healthy food, to be able to consume healthy food, and access that locally in our communities. And then thinking about waste reduction and really diverting what we can from the landfill, knowing that's both better for our planet, but also for our pockets, is we don't want to expand the fees that takes to process our waste and store it. And so if you go to the next slide, these buckets of work are all supported by our department, which is a great team of 3 full-time staff, and also 7 community organizations that we contract with to help deliver these programs and services in partnership with us. So moving on to the next slide. So I'm going to run through each of those 4 buckets in what we're actively addressing in terms of council adopted policies or potentially administrative policies, where we have plans in place and programming that's impacted. So they'll all kind of have the same layout, and they'll all have the ones where there's bolded items. And those items are either policies or programs that are really focused externally to provide resources to our community. And then where we see the arrow, those are ones specifically where one of those 7 community organizations are working with us to help deliver those services. And so, you know, we can see that there's a number of different resolutions that are passed by you. Those all have the numbers written on them. And there'll be some overlap in between how some of the resolutions are connected. So you'll see that like the Blue Horizons Project, Electrify Asheville Buncombe, is a specific program that we provide to our residents to help them reduce their energy consumption, power their homes and businesses with renewable energy as well. And our sustainable fee rebate program is something we provide through our development services department, where those who are building above and beyond what our minimum state requires in terms of sustainability, whether that's saving trees, whether that's energy related and solar panels, can get actually rebated on their permit fees for going above and beyond what is required. So moving on to our climate bucket. Again, you'll see the climate emergency resolution was both in the energy bucket and in this climate bucket, because it talks both about ending greenhouse gas emissions at our community-wide level, which more focuses in the energy category, but also really talks about what our resilience is and how we look at who is most impacted by a changing climate and building resilience and capacity in those communities. And Elevate AVL is the program that we are most excited to be building out and propping up in partnership with community. And I provided a presentation on that earlier this month, so not going to dig into those details here. So moving on to our next slide in our food policy. This really revolves around our food policy action plan that was originally adopted in 2013 and then updated in 2017. So we made some progress. We refocused our efforts and thought about what is the impact we're trying to have. And that's really focused a lot more externally facing. So although it impacts city property, right? So we have edibles growing on city property that can be found through our Asheville edibles map. You might have seen some recent coverage on that. We had an AmeriCorps fellow that just wrapped up her year of service that verified every piece of edible fruits and vegetables growing on that map to make sure they're in the right location, and relaunched that, which was a great service. Like our community gardens program, where we have community gardens on city property that we work with Bountiful Cities to help implement and manage that program. So another good example of how we're using our city assets and community partnership to deliver programming. And then moving on to our waste. Again, this is focused more towards our 50% waste reduction goal, which is the waste generated that we collect curbside. And the programs, again, a lot focused externally. We have our food scraps drop-off program where people can bring food waste to different locations around the city. That's a great collaboration with Buncombe County that's co-funded. And when we asked ourselves the question, are people willing to drive around their trash to divert it from the landfill? The answer was yes. And it's been a really successful program and really popular. Litter abatement, another great collaboration where we work with groups like Asheville Greenworks to organize cleanups, to run the Hard to Recycle campaigns, to install and maintain the trash trouts, which I don't know if all of you are familiar with them, but they go in streams and collect the waste, but let the aquatic life do its thing so that we can help get some of that litter out of our rivers. So again, this is just like a snapshot of like what resolutions are we working on in our active work plan, and what are some of those collaborations and programs that we're delivering into the community actually look like. So now I'm going to move on to the next slide and remind us that in 2023, we adopted the Municipal Climate Action Plan and took all these resolutions into consideration and looked at what are the highest impact activities that we can have to drive progress on them. And if you go to the next slide. So how do we drive progress on our goals? It also included with us some kind of a thought process and sequencing exercise on when do we need to be sure we're pulling on these levers, knowing that some things are going to take a long time, so we need to start them right now. Some things, you know, maybe can wait a little bit because we need to hope for some policy changes or regulatory reform to really unlock those strategies, which we advocate for in other ways. But also allows us to be nimble in the fact that as new opportunities arise, right, like the Inflation Reduction Act, we didn't know it was going to be a thing. And so as we say, here's an opportunity, maybe we want to reprioritize our resources to meet that moment. It also helps us understand maybe what we're pausing so that we can understand that staff capacity impact, and also hopefully then communicate with our community. So we're bringing everyone along with us and they don't go, wait a second, why'd you stop doing that thing? You know, so that we're all on the same page as we're trying to like make this momentum and drive progress towards the goals. So on our next slide, I'm going to run through a similar setup that I did previously, where I'm going to do a slide for each of those buckets of work. And these slides are each all going to be set up the same way, where you see internally focused projects on one side, externally focused projects on the other. And this is what's in our current fiscal year work plan for the sustainability department. The other thing I'll orient you to is that anything that has the little tiny star next to it is something that's already included in your proposed work plan that Deborah's going to review with you later that you've already gone over. And if you see the words on this slide and they don't exactly correlate to the words on your work plan, that's because they're all folded into, those are action items within the Municipal Climate Action Plan. And we kind of have a Municipal Climate Action Plan implementation bucket on the work plan to work with you on over the next coming year. And I would say the other thing I would draw your attention to is if you see something on here that maybe isn't on your work plan, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to another council committee. So for example, I put the 2024 GO Bond as a project that we're collaborating with a multi-departmental team in the organization. And that's been going to finance and HR committee and hasn't come to this one. So it doesn't mean that you or other councilwomen aren't receiving updates in other committee setups. So I'm not going to go over each of these. If you have questions about them, feel free to bring them up. I guess I would just draw to your attention the second and third bullet on the internally focused, which is about federal funding and implementing our sustainable fleet policy. You all took action on allowing us to apply and accept federal funds to purchase 3 EV vehicles, once in the spring, once in the summer. So that's an example of how some of this work ends up coming across your desk and in your court. So moving on to climate, the next slide. Here's another list. And again, happy to answer any questions. Not going to read them all, but just want to give you a sense of the scope of work in our work plan. What I will draw your attention to here is we're delivering direct technical assistance to over 20 projects where we're not the lead, but we're a part of a project team to help sustainability be implemented through other city projects, which I think is an important service that we're providing to our organization. And then the other one I would bring your attention to in the externally focused is the Explore City Supported Resilience Hubs. So that title is directly out of our Municipal Climate Action Plan. And we're exploring that through a number of different strategies. So I just wanted to give you one example, which is the Community Space Upfit Project, because you got an in-depth presentation on that at your agenda briefing. And hopefully we're able to see through that presentation an example of how, when we're providing technical assistance on a project, we're able to achieve multiple goals at getting resources to our community and getting input on some of these other concepts and strategies and ideas that maybe we're not as far along, to help kind of work our community through this process with us, to figure out what solutions our community wants and needs, versus taking that kind of top-down approach or that kind of out front approach of saying, let's engage on this specific item, right? But weaving it in to some of the other activities we're doing. So moving on to the next slide. Here's where we get about food. And one of the thing I guess that I'll highlight on this is the steep slope pollinator pilot. So this is an internal project because it's focused on parks property, but it's also a collaboration with Asheville Greenworks and Bee City in terms of getting some technical assistance, working with our park staff to look at some creative solutions for invasive plant management and places to put pollinators. And so it's like we're receiving technical assistance from community partners, we're working with our staff, and we're piloting, is this a viable solution to both increase pollinators on city property and deal with invasives in a place that's not easy to mow because it's on steeper slopes, which you know we have quite a few of. So that's like an example of how we collaborate on internal projects, but utilizing some of our external community expertise. And then moving on, we have one more slide. And this again, you'll be hearing more about our food scraps drop-off program and some of the metrics that go along with that. I mentioned that earlier. And then we'll just call out the development of the solid waste master plan. That was something both that was recommended through the Municipal Climate Action Plan and something that you all specifically funded through the budget process. And so you'll be seeing that come through as kind of its own standalone project. But we are working very closely with our sanitation division on the development of that plan. So moving on to the next slide. So this is what I want to make sure you feel comfortable with. If there's other ways that I can engage with you all and get input, I'm happy to hear those. But the two top bullets here are really more committee focused, and the two bullets below that are a little bit more public facing and opportunities, although all opportunities are available. So again, we're going to start providing these quarterly updates where we can take maybe a different view at some of the way that we do our work. Like maybe we'll dig in specifically into what our waste initiatives look like in programs. But then we'll also be delivering topic specific. So for specific projects or initiatives that we want to drill down into, happy to be providing those to this committee as well. We also provide sometimes more in-depth presentations at the Sustainability Advisory Committee and then provide maybe a higher level here. And so that's a way to share with our community and with you all, kind of different levels of information on our specific projects so people can kind of choose their own adventure of how much information they want to digest. And then also just to make you aware that we put out a quarterly newsletter. So I have the link in there to anybody to sign up. So if you want to know what we're up to, we put that out quarterly. We really focus on making sure we have an update in all of those 4 buckets of work. And so that's just a way to help round up like all the communication we're doing in one place for folks that aren't on the city website or city social media every day. And so the next slide, just wrap up the key takeaways. Like I said, we listed, there's a number of goals and resolutions and policies that have been passed, and hopefully you see which ones are being addressed under our current work plan. We really use the Municipal Climate Action Plan to be more strategic in how we are utilizing our capacity, our partnerships, our resources. And we do try to balance the externally focused work versus the internally focused. But all of this work, regardless of whether it's internal or external, really relies heavily on collaboration with our partners here at the city and other departments, as well as our community groups, to make sure we're delivering quality programs, projects, and services to our residents. So that's it. I'm happy to take questions or get some feedback from you all on what we have.
Vice Mayor?
Hi. Thank you very much, Bridget. That was a lot to unpack, I tell you, by not having a background in this sustainability program. But what I would like to say is thank you so much for actually dividing it up in buckets and making us sort of understand, and we can sort of, see what's going on. And it really helps a lot. And I just want to ask you one question. And the only reason I say this is because so the community can sort of understand, like say, for instance, the recycling that you talked about. Everybody's impacted by that daily, so they understand that. I would just like, could you give me some idea of the indirect and direct benefit of recycling for the community?
The indirect and direct. So I mean, I think anytime we go with waste diversion from our landfill, we have lower fees that we're paying to take our waste to the landfill. And then as the landfill fills up and changes, like there's a significant economic impact on where we put our waste. And so the more that we can divert from that, I think is just helps keep our costs to everybody lower. And I know cost of living is something that is really impactful to all of our residents who live here. And then I would say, and as an environmental benefit, those landfills create a ton of emissions that are not good for the air that we breathe. It impacts the way that our climate is changing because of the gases that are off-gassing into the atmosphere. We actually did a really cool slide during our Less Plastic Asheville campaign that I'll share with you that talks about what goes to the landfill and how that diversion helps us have healthier lives. And so it's kind of cool. It's like a 4-slide, and shows you some of the processes. So happy to share that with you, and you can share that with the community as well, in terms of what that is. And then the great part is those products go to Kirby, which is an independent provider that's a for-profit entity. And they sell those products so that they can be reused. And so they're not just going to sit in the landfill and waste away for a number of years. They're being made into other products and sold, which I think is great. So we're supporting that local economy, that circular economy that's out there. People have access then to buy more goods with reused products, right, that don't take as much energy and emissions to create. So it helps us all get along a little bit better, but there's also that economic impact, which I know is easier to digest sometimes too. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That was great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. It really highlights conversations you, me, and Deborah have had many times of there's a lot on y'all's plate already. And I mean, honestly, what this makes me think of is 3 staff people is not enough to really take the goals that we've established seriously. This is just, you guys are doing so much, and it's clear that it's spread thin, that it makes me want to be either we thin out what you're doing or we resource this more. I just can't really fathom how the effort versus the impact we say matches. It just seems like such a really high volume. And despite that reality, I think y'all do a really outstanding job. But it does make me just want to have that conversation with my peers on council of this stuff is really important. And we've set policy after policy after policy because the community is demanding that local governments really step in to protect our communities and prepare. And I would love to see us figure out what doubling down on supporting you and your peers and your teammates look like, so that we can take this even further. So that's one bucket of thoughts. The other thing that really jumps to mind when I look through this into more of the specifics is for a future presentation, I'd really love to learn more about the sustainability fee rebate program we offer for residential. It's been a long time since I've really heard, how is that working? Is it really incentivizing people to change their behavior? What does that look like? And the reason that really jumps to the top of mind for me now is that council is really looking hard at our equitable housing goal and at our unified development ordinance and at development and smart growth. So that's just such a big conversation we're having in other committees and across council, that this really kind of feels like a cousin of that, of, okay, we're looking at how we can get and direct the type of smart growth that we want, because growth is here whether we want it, and how that could be more sustainable. And I'd love to know more about beyond residential to commercial. So that would be something, I don't know if my peers have an interest in learning more, but perhaps that's a deeper dive we could have on a future meeting of like, how are those programs going? Are there tweaks that staff has been curious about that could improve? What are the goals we're achieving? I'd love to learn more about that one in particular.
And I will say that we have been looking at that program. We engaged with our residential building community. We've been taking a look back at some of the regulatory changes and some of the council goals to see if we can marry that up a little bit more. And so actually we're planning on bringing that back to you all.
Great.
And I think so we've been working with Development Services and our Home Builders Association on taking a relook at that and seeing who are we serving and what are the ways that we align that program with the outcomes that we're looking for.
Great. Look forward to hearing that when y'all have kind of dug into it a little further.
Yeah, and that's a policy that is approved at the council level. And so that is something that you all approve and have purview over.
Yeah. And I know that through the work that we dig into on PED, the way that staff is structuring, looking at regulatory policy is through these bundles of different UDO amendments. So I wonder, I'd love to know, like, do you think this will mount to being tucked in a bundle, and what bundle? So that might be more of a rolling up our sleeves, like figuring that out. But I think the first thing is like, I just would have loved to know how it's doing, and I make some assumptions that we might want to improve upon it. I think I don't know if there's been revisions to it since it was first created. It might be timely.
We did. We revised it in 2019, 2021, one of those
Great.
odd number of years. So it has gone under a revision since it was originally created. But we
Great.
also think there's some more room for improvement.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to learn about that. Yeah, and just again, a heap of gratitude. I mean, I really do, and this might be back towards my councilwomen of like, I just see this really, really long list of policies that we've passed, and I see incredible work from staff, but I don't know, I do feel like we're on the seesaw of the list of needs and things that we've committed to gets longer, and the list of projects and programs you're doing are getting longer. The number of staff, the resources has stayed the same. And then what's the impact? Like, if you look at that all as an equation, like, are we getting as far as we need to? Is it our job to resource this work? And are we doing our job to resource it to match what we're saying we want to achieve? So I don't know, that really comes up when I look at it all here together.
And I would say, if I may, that we have, the sustainability department, since its inception has grown from 1 to 3. So that's good. We added our 3rd full-time staff member shortly before COVID. And
we had 3 full-time staff people before.
Oh, well, it wasn't that way when I came on. So I guess it's shifted. It's gone up and gone down, and now it's back up. So, yeah. But the other things I would say where you've added staff capacity is in a waste reduction program manager position in sanitation, which has allowed us to have some more ownership over some of those waste reduction goals within that area of subject matter expertise, in which there's, again, strong collaboration, but some capacity that lives within that. And then also through the urban forester, right? Like that's another example of how you've added capacity to help reach some of those nature-based solution sustainability goals. So we've seen an increase in support for capacity to do this work. It lives in some different places. But again, I think that's why that collaboration between our departments is so vital.
So do you think you have all the capacity you need?
I mean, I think that's like a bigger conversation that depending on where the priorities are to go, I know Deborah has her hand up, so I don't want to invite her into the conversation before I get too far down that path if she wants to add.
No, it's okay, Bridget, to advocate for your needs. But what I wanted to interject is that similar to our equity department, equity, sustainability, these things are values for the organization. And so although you may not see these direct linkages in terms of, well, the equity department only has 3 staff. The sustainability and only has 3 staff. But it is incorporated as a value, the things that they're doing, the things that we're trying to accomplish throughout the organization. So quite frankly, every department, all 17 departments have a responsibility to assist with addressing goals, issues, the resolutions that were passed. We don't see those resolutions just housed particularly for sustainability in the sustainability office, but now we call it a department. Started out as an office and then it's grown up to be a department.
Yep.
So we rely on their leadership, but we definitely, it's incorporated and integrated into everything that we do throughout the organization.
Great. Thanks for pulling this quarterly report together. I look forward to hearing about development incentives for green building and sustainability, and to all the other program updates as they come along. Any other thoughts from the team? All right, we will go back into the agenda, and since we had jumped to item 4, we'll go back. Deborah, are you ready for item number 3, where we take a look at our work plan, or do you want to tag that on at the end? What's your preference?
I will leave it up to you all. If you all want to hear more of the substantive things and we can have this one at the end, it's up to you.
Yeah, let's go that route. I know that
Okay.
we have a bunch of folks and it's our second review. So let's proceed on to item number 5, which is the community responder update with Beth.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning. As Talia's pulling that up, I am Beth Beekle, the business manager for the Asheville Fire Department, and I'm here to provide a quick update for our community responder team. Next slide, please. As always, we start with our key takeaways for this presentation. Number 1, the community responder pilot program became permanent as of July 1. The program was developed to proactively support individuals in crisis by connecting them to resources and respond to business concerns. Staff has completed an assessment of the pilot program to solidify scope and objective of the team. And as a part of that assessment, staff is recommending to rename the team AFD REST, which stands for Asheville Fire Department Resource and Engagement Support Team. And we'll get into that a little bit further. So next slide, please. A little bit of background on the team. So with the passing of our FY25 budget, the community responder program became permanent. The team consists of 5 firefighters and 3 civilians. We did hire that civilian supervisor a few months back, Hillary Jones, and we have 2 open peer support specialist positions that we'll be posting in the coming weeks. So the team consists of 8 full-time employees. Each day, they work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and that's just one single team out there each day of 2 to 3 people, and they work throughout the city limits. The team proactively engages with those in crisis, supports relevant calls for service when available, and responds to reports of encampments.
Beth, can you just explain about that terminology, civilians, please?
Yes. So the 5 firefighters, we were using certified firefighters that had been with the department for a long time. They volunteered for this program, and so we pulled them off the trucks, and we were filling that with overtime. And then we did add 3 civilians to that team, and that just means not certified firefighters. So Hillary Jones, we hired her as the supervisor. She came to us from Homeward Bound. And then the 2 peer support specialists, they will come to us from the general community as well. And that will be through the opioid funds. So just a little clarity on that.
Yeah, and these will be paid positions,
Yes, yep, all paid
not
positions.
volunteers.
Correct. Next slide, please. So in that assessment of the pilot program, as we went from pilot to permanent, we did identify some challenges within the team, and I have those listed up here. And then we came up with opportunities to address those challenges. So challenge number 1 with the pilot program, defining the scope. What specifically should the team focus on? How can we supplement the work that is going on with our partners in the community and not duplicate what is happening? And then, as with any pilot program, lack of specific historical data for decision making. So with that main challenge, we identified opportunities to address them. We're going to assess the pilot program to define clear scope for the team, including objectives. We're going to work to strengthen our relationship with the partners, both in the county and the service providers, to help support overall missions for everyone. And then we're really going to work to refine our data collection to link to outcomes. Moving on to challenge number 2, as I'm pretty sure we are all aware, confusion with the community paramedic program. Calling our team community responders and having the community paramedics out there. The 2 teams do support a very similar population, but they vary in scope and objectives. So that has been causing quite a bit of confusion, both internally and externally, to the point where we don't believe we were able to provide the service that we really could if there was some clarity around that. So our opportunity there is to rename the program to better define the team and alleviate the confusion. Next slide, over the next 2 slides, I'm going to talk about, dig into those opportunities a little bit more. So digging into our opportunities, we want to define clear objectives for this team so we can communicate those widely, internally, externally, so we can really show what this team is focusing on. So I have the 3 objectives for this year listed there for you. We want to enhance public safety for all. So this team will support gaps in service. They will be the first touch for any reported encampments for our encampment response citywide. We're going to provide business support and education, and then return APD and AFD apparatus to service when possible. Objective number 2, the day-in, day work to support the community is provide direct crisis care, connect individuals to resources, and provide for any immediate needs when available. And then number 3, going from a pilot program to a first-year program, we believe that it'd be good to focus on identifying areas for growth and improvement. Yes, Maggie, go ahead.
I don't understand what 1D means.
Sure. So that is a big part of how this team started. So we get calls for service for someone sleeping on the ground, mental health issues, that kind of stuff. And when a 911 call comes in, we send APD and AFD. So a majority of the time in those instances, there's no crime being committed and there's no immediate medical need. So before this team was around, we were kind of stuck in a spot where there wasn't an opportunity. So this team really helps fill that gap. They have the availability to hang out with somebody for hours and check up with them throughout the week. So it's really kind of filling that service gap and putting our larger apparatus and our police department back in service where they can respond to the better service need there. Awesome. Okay. Next slide, please. And our opportunity with the name change. We have had several conversations, several meetings with the 2 names being so similar, and it's been pretty much unanimous support saying we should probably change the name, and that will help alleviate some of the confusion. So we met internally and externally with partners and landed with AFD REST. This name represents the purpose of the team, does not duplicate any other known team names, was discussed with those internal and external partners, and was reviewed both through a communication and marketing lens and responsiveness to constituent lens to help clarify any confusion that happens with those 2 names.
Beth, could you give me more background on the confusion? Was the confusion in the name or was the confusion in the function?
I think it was a little bit of both, honestly. With it being a pilot program, we would get lots of calls and emails saying, could your team help with this? Or could your team help with that? So we were really kind of developing what our scope was and where our best lane was, where we weren't duplicating services, but we knew there was still a great need. And then I also think having community in both of them, they were used interchangeably. So a little bit of both, I believe.
And that explains the external confusion, but explain a little bit about the internal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and we didn't communicate our scope widely because, again, we weren't 100% sure of what lane we were in. So yes, there was unfortunately confusion on internally between us, the police department. What exactly is our role and how are we supporting the different services? And we really needed that pilot time to figure out where our best lane was and what, with the capacity of a small team, where could we make the most impact and how can we best support all the other services that are out there?
And any confusion with how we dispatch calls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So last week, I think it was, our team met with police and dispatch, and we hashed a lot of that stuff out. We spoke to the police department on how we could best support them, and county dispatch was great supporters in us, gave us some great ideas on how we can better get assigned to calls and really stand that up. So we're working on implementing that so we can have very, very clear communication for our dispatchers, for our police department, our community, when we can show up and really help provide service. It is a little bit hard with the dispatch with a small team and we don't work 24 hours. So it's still going to be that supplementing support. They aren't that very first responder. It's okay, if there's no immediate need here, is our team available to come respond to that?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we are at a point, because it was a pilot early on. It was like we weren't really giving the number out. We are at a point now where dispatch has the opportunity to fold this in as a different tool for response.
Yes, I would say we're working on building that and building those relationships. It's not a phone number where you're going to call a community responder,
Right.
But it is working with those dispatch. I would say it's just like any other call for service. Those dispatchers are trained to gather all the information and send the proper resource. We are going to be one of those resources, but again, they may be across town helping somebody with a mental health crisis where they can't leave. So it's not to the point where we can be dispatched to every single call.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in some instances, we would have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, we would have folks calling in to dispatch and saying, I need a community responder. And we were like, well, the dispatcher would be, well, let's talk through this, without them, because we had done such a good job, I think, of talking about the community responder program. And sometimes they really didn't need a responder. They needed a paramedic.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It was a true medical issue.
Yeah, absolutely. They are doing great work in the community. But yeah, I kind of compare it to like a fire, right? Like if you called in a fire, you wouldn't say send ladder 1 down the street, right? The dispatcher assesses the situation, see who's available, and dispatches those resources. So yes, we are continuing having conversations daily on how we can best improve that process for sure.
The only other comment I have, did this come up at all in like testing the name, that when you look at that word closely, it looks like the word arrest, and that's like the opposite of what we're trying to do. And that, I mean, that like really sharply strikes me. I know that you guys have been thoughtful about a new name and it's always hard to get an acronym to work, but that's like not the signal we want to send, right?
That did not come up. We did go through several iterations. We worked with our CAPE team on an acronym that could, be a little bit catchy. We worked with dispatch on not confusing. We talked to the homeless strategy division. So we did vet it through a fair amount of people, but no, that specific issue
I'd
didn't
say
come up.
that for me, Maggie, it's amazing how you look at something.
Yeah.
When I saw arrest, I felt somewhat relieved. I felt that it gives APD a rest, it gives the fire department a rest, and also the people that need the help, they rest. So I felt it. That's the way I looked at it. It's amazing how people look at different things, but yeah, but that's what I looked at.
Yeah, but I can absolutely we'll work with our CAPE team on the marketing, and maybe it's adding some hyphens in there, or maybe it's just how it's kind of being brought on the slide there, but we can definitely.
I know it's hard to group wordsmith, but there might be some and I hear that, Sandra. I can feel that as you say that, and maybe the jaded person who hears concerns about our response. Although I hear a lot of really positive stuff, and AFD is kind of a bureaucratic way. People don't know you as AFD, you're the fire department. So just maybe a little more massaging so that it's, I don't know. Again, that's well below a policy conversation, but I'm taking the facilitator privilege to mention it. But thanks for at least hearing that.
Absolutely.
And we're testing. If we find that there are some concerns or some issues, we go back to the drawing board. We're in test mode.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we're good to go to the next slide. So just some next steps for you all. We're going to finalize that program design, really get it solidified with year one goals and objectives. We are going to finalize that communication and engagement plan to include marketing the rename. So again, we'll test that with our CAPE team, Maggie, and make sure that we're doing what we need to. And then in the coming weeks, we are going to hire those 2 peer support positions. And next slide. Back to our key takeaways. So the Community Responder Pilot Program is now permanent. The program was developed to support individuals in crisis and our businesses. We did complete an assessment of our pilot program, and we do think it is in our best interest to rename the program to ensure some clarity between the 2 teams. And that's all I have. Next slide is the question slide.
I'll offer, just sometimes the anecdotes are nice, and I hope this can get back to the team, that I just had the opportunity to meet some folks from the STEADY Collective who does a lot of who focuses on harm reduction. And one of the first things they offered was, man, the fire department has been great to work with. They're everywhere when we need them. They really offer a helping hand. It just felt so additive. And I think, to the councilwomen who came before, who we've been focusing on reimagining public safety for a long time, I think this is what that looks like. And I think that having this group centered in our encampment approach, I feel really proud and thankful for the shifts that we've been able to make, and I'm really grateful for the team.
And I just wanted to add just one other thing, just again, you mentioned, Maggie, about the other council members who came before us, and wanted to lift up Councilmember Smith in terms of just her advocacy for this program. And also to say that we are going to present this as part of the manager's report for full council this evening at the business meeting. So you'll be hearing this information again. And Beth, let's make sure that we incorporate some of the information and questions, and possibly a further explanation of like that 1D, AFD, APD support services. Maybe we can clarify that when we go to the business meeting and be proactive about it.
Absolutely,
So,
I sure can.
Thank you all, and thank you, Beth, for your leadership.
I want to add something before we conclude. Do you all remember when Prince changed his name?
Yeah.
And for the longest time, you would see the symbol, but you would always see them mention the artist formerly known as Prince. We roll out a lot of programs, and there are a lot of acronyms. So I think in our marketing attempt, we probably need to specify that this program was formerly the Community Responder Program.
Yes, absolutely. I have already written formerly known as several times, and it does make me chuckle thinking of it.
Good idea.
But yes, we will ensure that there is very, very strong communication with formerly known as, and I think we will put a lot of emphasis on that name change as we explain the objectives. Like I said, I think the 2 points of confusion was what is exactly our scope, and who are we compared to the paramedic program. So we will work hard on that for sure.
And you will also have questions, I believe, from another council member with regards to, there are community responder programs in other parts of the state, and does a name change change anything in terms of the function. And I don't think that that's what we're trying to do. We can be comparable to another community responder program in another community without having to call it community responder program.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And when we started this program, we did look all over the country on what was out there. We're seeing in the fire service that there's more and more fire leaders that are getting there. But honestly, when we first looked, most of them weren't housed in the fire department. So we did kind of have to create our own. But again, it was a unique situation that the community paramedics were already around. So no, not intended to be a change in function or training, just really, really trying to show what the objectives of this team are and just provide any clarity of the duplicating of the services there.
Great. And I see an extremely important note in the chat.
Threw me under the bus.
Let us know it's your birthday.
Thanks, Chief.
Happy birthday, Beth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're grateful for
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Showed a tremendous amount of leadership from this program, as well as the work on project management with water resources. Just really, really thankful that you're part of our team.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. We will shift into our stated 6th agenda item, but technically our 5th is to ask Elise Lewis to talk with us about the 2024 Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant. Hey, Elise.
Hello, good afternoon. So my name is Elise Lewis. I'm the Financial Business Manager for the Asheville Police Department. This presentation is not as exciting or informative as all the others. It's short, sweet, and to the point. So this is a grant that we apply for every year. We've been doing it for over a decade. If you want to go next slide, sorry. It's the Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant. So we're applying for an additional year of funding from the Department of Justice grant. It allows for APD to use federal funding to purchase items that are not budgeted for by the city. The funds may be used to provide equipment, supplies, contractual support, training, technical assistance, and information systems for criminal justice. Next slide. So we received this annual opportunity to apply for this grant. It's preliminarily determined that APD is eligible to receive this award of $71,999, which we share with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. We would get $58,689, and they receive $13,310, and that's determined by the Department of Justice, not us. We are looking to use the funds to outfit our new real-time crime center. And we just found out about this announcement a couple weeks ago. So I reached out to Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. They have not yet made a final determination as to what their intended use of the funding is. But the deadline to apply is October 22nd. So sometime between now and then, I'll hear what they're going to use theirs for. The grant does not require local matching funds. So this is 100% funded by the Department of Justice. And next slide. Couple just key takeaways. We apply for this every year. It's an additional year of funding. It allows for APD to use federal funding to purchase items not budgeted for by the city, and it can be used for equipment, supplies, contractual support, training, technical assistance, and information systems for criminal justice. Next, any questions? No, it's okay. This is pretty straightforward. Nothing new, nothing exciting here. So just information, just sharing that, we're looking to apply for this in October. Typically we find out, let's see. Yeah, so we'll find out in October. We'll be able to use it after that.
And so, Elise, if you could,
Yes.
could you just give us an idea of some of the programs this particular grant has funded in this department?
Sure.
Okay.
So last year we applied to be able to purchase, us and Buncombe County, to be able to purchase AED kits for cars. We're currently in the process of procuring that. We have to put that out to bid. Prior to that,
At least what are AED acronym? Do the acronym.
oh, sorry. The wow, I don't know the acronym off the top of my head. Hold on. Automated external defibrillators.
Okay. They do what?
I'm sorry?
What do they do? What
They're for cardiac
heart attack? Okay.
heart attacks. Yes.
I
We
just
don't
want
have
to
those ready for the officer.
give people an idea of what those programs are. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. And then prior to that, we've used it for overtime, for part one crimes. We've used it to purchase new rifles. We've used it for our interview recording platform. And originally when we purchased our tasers, we were able to use it to help purchase the taser equipment. That's just some of the, things in the past that we've used it for.
Deputy Chief Stepp, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm just here to support Lise, and if anybody has any additional questions about the program, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think Council Member Vice Mayor was trying to just make the program more relevant to the average person on the street. Why would we be applying for this grant?
Yeah.
Yeah, this grant has been a great supplement to APD in Buncombe County and enabling us to get equipment and the overtime in the past that we've not been able to get to address our ongoing needs.
Okay.
Great. And this is just for information. We don't need to move, but we'll see it coming through council. Okay.
Correct.
Any other thoughts from our team? Great. Thank you, Elise. Appreciate the question. And Sandra, I really appreciate you digging in. That helped me too. Okay, so that was our 6th item on the agenda. So we're going to loop back and do what was formerly agenda item 3 now, finalizing the FY25 work plan with Deborah.
Thank you. And I apologize for the technical difficulty. We're still having it, but hopefully we can get through this. This is, as was noted by the chairperson, that we are trying to finalize the work plan for this committee. I'm going to have to start with an apology that a lot of you, because you were on previous committees or other committees, you have heard a lot of this information numerous times. So bear with me. I hope this will be the last time because we're trying to finalize at least the work plan for Environment and Safety Committee. Next slide. This is really, really important work because it essentially sets a context, a framework, literally a work plan. What are we going to be doing? How are we going to, from either a policy perspective, grants, numerous activities that council does as it relates to things coming to this committee, what are we going to be working on? How do we let the community know, as well as our advisory boards and committees, these are the things that we want you to focus on over the year. And it's set in the context of your Vision 2036, your council priorities that you adopt during the spring. And so this has a lot of value, operational value, and hopefully community impact as well. So these work plans, again, are also dynamic. They will change. You just heard from Bridget about their work plan, and you also will let's maybe get some more information about this and bring this to this committee. So what you will see are, I will say, kind of tentative things that are on your agenda and plan for your upcoming agendas. But obviously, as a committee, we're nimble, we're flexible. You can change these things at any time. Next slide, please. And so again, setting that context and linkages and alignments, your vision framework, your strategic priorities, and then your priority goals that you set. And as I stated, strategic priorities and priority goals are set as part of your annual retreat. Next slide. And so some of the key topics that'll be coming to this group, we've talked about environmental things. We'll be talking about things related to public safety, as well as parks and recreation. And again, grants, noise, solid waste, a number of items that will be coming to you over the next several months. Next slide, please. So here's your kind of the work plan. We've done the September items at this meeting, things that'll be coming up in October and November and December. And I must alert you that your November and your December meetings are really close to some really big holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we may be having some changes and rescheduling of those dates because they're just too close to those major holidays. But you can see in terms of October, a lot of information from APD. And then we've got one ordinance change to address nuisance vehicles, and that actually is going to come from our Public Works Department. In November, we still have a number of items from the public safety perspective, and then the climate justice and city operations update, which would be an environmental given by Bridget. Next slide, please. And then we've got you out to December and January. And then we've got all these other pending items that will be coming to you. Some of those are repetitive in terms of things that you may have addressed in November or December that will be coming back for updates. Next slide, please. And so we have covered the initial discussion of the work plan, trying to finalize the work plan at this meeting. And then, as noted, we'll work with any advisory boards, other committees, and then have annual reports from those advisory boards and community partners with regards to their work on some of these items and just their work overall. So next slide, please. I won't go back over the key takeaways, but if you all want to go back, Talia, if you can go back to those agenda items just to make sure, yes, thank you. If there are any questions that you have about any of these items and scheduling, I'll be more than happy to respond, but otherwise, you got a pretty full agenda for the next several months.
I have a question, and information is just slipping my mind, but I wanted to know pertaining to the Real-Time Intelligence Center. I wondering if we finalize that interlocal agreement, because I thought we were coming back around to talk about governance.
I'm going to let Deputy Chief Step, yes, I think she's still on, if she can respond.
I am still on, but can you repeat?
Pertaining to the Real-Time Intelligence Center or Crime Center, I was wondering, did we ever finalize the interlocal agreement with the county? Because at one point I feel like we had a strong draft, but there was still some some existing issues and questions around governance, and roles and responsibilities. So I don't remember that being finalized, but it may be skipping my mind.
No, you're absolutely correct. We did, even city management, we did meet with Buncombe County, and we asked for a couple of modifications to the agreement. And we have not heard back from Buncombe County on that, unless the city manager's office has gotten word that I have not.
We have not.
So by November, we should have an answer, or?
We're going to have that plus.
Okay.
Any other questions on the work plan?
Yeah, I guess I would say, in light of the public comment we received at the top of the hour on the panhandling solicitation ordinance, I know that we saw some of this in June, but I'd also love to just see, I think in June when we talked about this, there were just kind of some inquiries of the data of what is causal versus correlated really struck me. because that felt like there was some data connecting the dots between traffic safety, panhandling, and police response that I just would like to keep drilling into that data. So if we're going to see that again in October, to really understand what the expanded need is, as well as how, like, the impact we've been seeing since we made tweaks in the other zones. So always wanting, I know that we approach public safety as with the other things with real data centered. And so I think we've given some feedback back in June. So hoping that we can kind of see some of the information tweaked so that we can understand what's being suggested.
Absolutely. We will have that information.
Yes. Thanks. Great.
Any other? Okay. All right. With that, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic. Big milestone. It takes a lot to get the work planning in queue, looking at the cross-departmental initiatives. Deborah, managing 17 departments towards council goals is a really big piece of work and takes a lot of leadership, and I always really appreciate when we get to this point of the year to say, okay, this is where we're going. Let's all row in the same direction. And I know it takes a lot, so excited. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that gets us through 6 of our agenda items. The only remaining is the closing public comment. Talia, do we have anyone in public comment at the end of our meeting?
No, we do not.
All right. With that, we can move towards concluding. I know we have a work session and a council meeting, so we'll all be together again very soon. So thanks so much to everybody who made this call happen, and look forward to seeing my peers on the dais soon. Bye, y'all.